The Middle Ages, which began in Europe with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century CE, were a time of warfare that determined the fate of empires all over the world. This boundary-shifting era, also known as the medieval period, ran into the beginning of the Renaissance and the Age of Discovery in the 15th century. Different historians demarcate different start and end dates for the medieval period. However you see it, the medieval period lasted a long time, up to a millennium, and it witnessed numerous massive events that altered the political, social, and even geographical shape of Europe and the world. Welcome back to Nutty History, and in this video, we'll look at some of the most important and decisive moments that shaped the Middle Ages and the course of history as we know it today. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. The Battle of Hastings happened in 1066 as a result of a disputed succession. England had been ruled for the previous 24 years by Edward the Confessor, who, despite being married, had failed to produce any children to succeed him. In the middle of his reign in 1051, the king is said to have promised the English succession to his cousin William, Duke of Normandy. Edward had spent half his life in exile in Normandy and owed its rulers a great debt of gratitude. This plan was not well received by Edward's English subjects, particularly the family of his queen, Edith. She was the daughter of the country's most powerful earl, Godwin, and her brothers, the Godwinsons, became the dominant force in English politics in the late 1050s. However, when Edward died on January 5, 1066, it was his brother-in-law, Harold Godwinson, who claimed the throne, claiming that the old king had nominated him in his dying moments. Harold was crowned the next day, but he quickly encountered problems with his regime. The first was an unexpected invasion led by Harald Hardrada, King of Norway, which he defeated on September 25, 1066, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge in Yorkshire. The second challenge came from the man who was promised the throne, William, the Duke of Normandy. By the evening of October 13th, the English and Norman armies were ready for battle. William's intention as an invader in hostile territory was to force a decisive battle with Harold. When word of William's landing reached Harold, he rushed the core of his battle-weary army south, stopping only briefly in London to gather any additional forces he could. On October 14th, shortly after dawn, Harold positioned his forces in a strong defensive formation along the ridge now occupied by the Battle Abbey buildings. The English line probably stretched for nearly half a mile and formed a shield wall on the hilltop, literally a wall of shields held by soldiers standing close together. This formation was thought to be almost impenetrable to cavalry, but it also left little room for maneuver. At about 9 a.m., the cry of battle was heard. To win, the English needed to remain behind their shield wall, allowing the Normans to erect in repeated attacks before sweeping forward to defeat the invaders. The Normans, on the other hand, had to climb the slopey field to be within bowshot of the English, a couple of hundred meters at most, before breaking the English line with archers and infantry so the cavalry could ride through and finish off the broken remnants. It was an odd kind of battle, with one side attacking with all their might and the other standing firm as if rooted to the ground. The Normans continued their assaults on the English shield wall for the rest of the day. They pretended to flee in the middle of a battle at least twice to encourage the English to break ranks and pursue them. The Anglo-Saxons were so close together that it was said the dead could scarcely fall and the wounded could not remove themselves from the action. With the autumn light fading, the Normans made one last push for the ridge. Then came the decisive moment. Harold perished during the final assault. 4 Norman knights did the evil act. This brutal battle altered the course of history, making Harold the final Anglo-Saxon king of England. It founded the French-speaking Normans as the new rulers of England, resulting in significant cultural, economic, and military transformations, as well as the development of the modern English language. A medieval commoner was usually a farmer, and as a farmer who used animals to work, you had to bring these animals indoors for their own safety. This was done to protect them from the wild animals that roam the countryside, like wolves and bears that could easily end your goat or chicken. The loss of any animal as a peasant could be disastrous, but the loss of a valuable animal like an ox would be catastrophic. None of this would happen if they were inside your house, as they would be safe. However, because none of these animals were house-trained, They must have made the house even dirtier than it would have been otherwise. They would have also brought in fleas and flies, adding to the unsanitary nature of the house. The Black Death, ironically, was caused by a bacteria that was usually spread by fleas, the same fleas that were present in the animals that were brought indoors. And thanks to the unsanitary nature of the commoners, the disease spread far and fast. Unlike us, the medieval people did not understand the true cause of this disease. Thus, many believed it was a form of divine punishment, retribution for sins against God, like greed, blasphemy, heresy, and fornication. According to this reasoning, the only way to defeat the plague was to seek God's forgiveness. Many people believed that the best way to accomplish this was to rid their communities of sinners and other troublemakers. So in 1348 and 1349, thousands of Jews were removed from the earth. Some people dealt with the terror and uncertainty of the Black Death epidemic by lashing out at their neighbors. Others dealt with it by turning inward and worrying about the state of their own souls. So how did the Black Death end? Well, the truth is, it never really did. However, officials in the port city of Ragusa were able to slow its spread by isolating arriving sailors until it was clear that they did not carry the disease, creating social distancing that relied on isolation to slow the disease's spread. It wasn't until the 1800s, thanks to the work of Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, that germs were discovered to be the cause of the disease. In 1894, Alexander Yersin discovered the plague's bacteria. Yersinia pestis was the name given to the bacteria. The plague resulted in rapid wage increases as landowners competed for workers by paying more. In 1351, a law was passed to force wages to return to what they had been before the Black Death. This was one of the causes of the 1381 Peasants' Revolt, which eventually led to the end of the Dark Ages and marked the beginning of the Renaissance. Thomas Becket, the son of a London merchant, was a complex man. In his youth, he was a typical energetic young man, proud, selfish and arrogant, vain and eager to please. But in later life, he became one of the most devout archbishops of the 12th century. Despite their social status differences, Thomas's closest friend was Henry, who went on to become King Henry II of England. People said the two men had but one heart and one mind as they hunted and played chess together. When Henry became king at the age of 21, Becket became his chancellor. They both worked tirelessly to restore law and order to Henry's realm. During Henry's reign, legal terms like trial by jury and assizes became common in the English language. The king's judges traveled the country enforcing the common law, which was the law of all free men. The church was an exception, as it had its own courts and laws. Priests who committed evil acts to innocent people could avoid common law justice by claiming the benefit of clergy or the right to be tried in the bishop's court. The worst that could happen was expulsion from the priesthood. The rich bishops and abbots of the church enjoyed and exploited a great deal of power in the country at the time. And while the church swore allegiance to the king, they also insisted that their true allegiance was to God and his earthly representative, the Pope, in Rome. When Henry's Archbishop of Canterbury died in May 1161, he saw an opportunity to bring the church to heel by promoting his best friend Thomas to the newly vacated post. Becket's entire demeanor appears to have changed with the donning of his archbishop's robes, as he appeared to have undergone a religious conversion. King Henry and Thomas Becket were good friends until they disagreed about clerical privilege. Henry stated that the church was subject to local law, but Becket maintained that the church was above the law. Their conflict reached a head in October of 1164 at Northampton Castle, when supporters of Henry accused Thomas of being a traitor to his king. The two old friends exchanged some harsh words before Thomas made a wise move to France to protect himself. Thomas was exiled for 6 years before returning to Canterbury when things calmed down. On Christmas Day 1170, while preaching from the cathedral, Thomas displayed his stormy temperament once more when he excommunicated some of his fellow bishops with the words, "May they all be cursed by Jesus Christ." When Henry learned of this outburst, he became enraged and is said to have uttered these fateful words, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" 4 of Henry's knights took this as a call to arms and immediately set out for Canterbury. On December 29th, they arrived at Canterbury Cathedral and found Becket before the high altar. Now the knights did not appear to intend to end Becket at first, but when he stood firm and unafraid, the 4 knights decided to finish him. When Henry heard the news, he was shocked because he believed his words had caused Becket's death. As an act of penitence, he dressed in sackcloth and ashes and fasted for 3 days. Becket was immediately hailed as a martyr and canonized in 1173, after which his shrine in Canterbury Cathedral became the most important pilgrimage site in England, with relics associated with him being distributed to churches across Europe. So, what other significant events do you know shaped history today? Tell us in the comment section below. Like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and as always, thanks for watching Nutty History. We'll see you next time.